What happens when an open industry starts building rules? When recognition becomes something you can win and something you can miss? When creators stop just making content and start building power? This episode looks at the tension behind the growth, the shift from freedom to structure, from passion projects to real media businesses. If you care about where podcasting is going, this is the conversation.
This is Into the Podverse with Tony Doe. Podcast innovations, challenges, opportunities, and culture from an African perspective.
6 years is not a long time in traditional media, but in podcasting, it's a full generation. The rise of the Podcast Academy tells the story of an industry trying to take itself seriously and still figuring out what that actually means. When the Academy launched, the mission was to give podcasting its own standards, its own recognition system, and its own seat at the table alongside film, music, and television. The Ambies were meant to do for podcasts what the Oscars and Grammys had done for their industries: respect, structure, legitimacy. And to be fair, progress has been made. The Ambies have grown in visibility. More creators now see podcasting not just as a hobby, but as a profession. Big platforms, major studios, and independent voices all share the same ecosystem. On the surface, the Academy has helped push podcasting forward. But beneath that progress, there are still open questions. That's where voices like James Cridland come in. Cridland has spent years tracking the industry closely, and his reflections on the Academy's 6-year journey land somewhere between respect and concern. He acknowledges the growth, but he also points out the gaps, especially around relevance, global reach, and real impact. One of the clearest criticisms is this: who is the Academy really for? If it is meant to represent podcasting as a whole, then it must go beyond a largely US-centric view. Podcasting is global by nature. Its barriers to entry are low. Its voices are diverse, and its audiences are everywhere. Yet, much of the recognition system still feels concentrated in a few familiar circles. There's also the question of visibility. Outside of industry insiders, the Academy does not yet carry the cultural weight it aimed for. Winning an Ambie matters, but does it move the needle for audiences? Does it change discovery? Does it elevate creators in a lasting way? The answers are still developing. Cridland's broader point is not that the Academy has failed, it is that it has not yet fully arrived. And that distinction matters here because institutions are not built in a straight line. They are shaped over time through credibility, consistency, and trust. The Academy is still in that shaping phase. It has laid the foundation, but the structure is not yet complete. There's also a deeper tension at play here. Podcasting grew because it was open. Anyone could start a show. Anyone could find an audience. The moment you introduce gatekeepers, awards, and formal recognition, you begin to define what good looks like. And that can raise standards, but it can also narrow the field. So the Academy walks a fine line here. It must elevate quality without losing the openness that made podcasting powerful in the first place. The lessons here are: first, legitimacy cannot be declared, it must be earned. Awards and organizations only matter if the wider audiences believe they matter. Second, global industries need global thinking. If podcasting is worldwide, its institutions must reflect that reality, not just in words, but in action. And third, visibility is everything. Recognition that stays within industry circles has limited power. For the Academy to truly shape podcasting, it must connect more directly with listeners and not just creators. And finally, patience is part of the process. 6 years is a start, not a conclusion. The most respected institutions in media took decades to earn their place. Podcasting is simply moving faster and feeling that pressure in real time. The moral of all this is, if you want to represent an industry, you must grow with the industry. The Podcast Academy has taken very important steps, but the next phase will define it. It must decide whether it wants to be a formal badge of approval or a true driver of podcasting's future. Because in the end, podcasting does not just need recognition, it needs representation that reflects what it has already become. The story around Alex Cooper and her Unwell network feels bigger than gossip. That's why I'm talking about it. It reads like a familiar chapter in modern media, a fast rise, a clash of power, and a test of what kind of institution you're trying to build. Unwell was born from momentum. Call Her Daddy had already become a cultural force, and Cooper did what many smart creators try to do, turn influence into infrastructure. Build a network, sign talent, scale the brand, and on paper, it makes perfect sense. Own the pipeline, not just the microphone. But scale has a cost. The fallout with Alex Earl, one of the network's early breakout voices, pulled that cost into the open. What might have been a typical contract dispute turned into a very public split, with commentary, criticism, and sides being taken. Then voices like Brianna LaPaglia adding fuel and shaping a narrative that the network may not be the easiest place for creators to thrive. This is where the story becomes less about personalities and more about structure. Every creator-led network faces the same tension. Are you building a home for talent or a machine that runs on talent? At the beginning, those two ideas look the same. Everyone benefits. The platform grows, the creators grow, the audience grows. But as money, contracts, and control enter the picture, the gap widens. Creators want freedom. Networks want consistency. Creators want ownership. Networks want leverage. Something has to give. Unwell now sits in that uncomfortable middle ground. It's no longer a scrappy extension of one podcast. It is trying to become a real media company. That means executives, strategy, and systems. But culture does not scale as easily as revenue. If creators begin to feel like replaceable parts instead of partners, the cracks show. And in today's internet, those cracks go viral. Still, it would be a mistake to read this as a failure. In many ways, this is what growth looks like in public. The difference is that older media companies made these mistakes behind closed doors. Today, everything plays out on TikTok, in podcasts, on headlines. The audience is not just watching the content, they're watching the business. There's also an irony here. The same drama that threatens the network's reputation is also feeding its visibility. Attention, even negative attention, keeps the brand in the conversation. But attention is not the same as trust, and in media, trust is the asset that lasts. So what are the lessons? First, relationships are the real currency. Contracts can bind people, but they cannot make them stay committed. If creators feel respected and fairly treated, they stay. If they do not, they leave, and they talk. Second, growth without clarity creates conflict. A network must decide early what it is, a collaborative space for creators or a top-down business. Trying to be both often leads to tension. Third, reputation compounds just like success. A few public disputes can shape how future creators see you. In a crowded market, perception can decide who signs with you before the numbers even come into play. And finally, power needs restraint. When one brand or personality becomes the center of everything, it is easy to overreach. But sustainable media is rarely built on control alone. It is built on alignment. The moral is simple, even if the situation is not. If you build your platform on people, you must learn how to keep people. Unwell is not finished. It's being refined. The question now is whether it evolves into a stable creator-respecting media company or becomes another case study of how fast growth without strong foundations can turn momentum into friction. In the end, this is not just Alex Cooper's story. It is a preview of where the entire creator economy is headed. If you care about how podcasting in Nigeria is growing, take a look at the Nigerian Podcast Index report. It gives a clear snapshot of the space right now, the shows, the trends, and where the real movement is happening. The index is also open for submissions and it's being updated regularly. If you have a podcast, this is the place to get listed and recognized. You must be Nigerian, at home or in diaspora, and you must have an RSS feed. To read the report, visit nigerianpodcastindex.com/report. If you want to submit your podcast, go to nigerianpodcastindex.com/submit. There's a tool from Podcast Haven called the AI Podcast Growth Report. It works like a strategy assistant for your podcast. You paste your RSS feed or your YouTube link and it studies your episodes. Then it gives you a clear report on what your show is doing well, what is missing, and where you can improve. The main value is in how it thinks. It looks at your topics, your consistency, and your positioning. Then it suggests better episode ideas, highlights content gaps, and gives you a simple growth plan you can follow over the next few months. Most podcast AI tools focus on editing clips or transcripts. This one focuses on direction. It helps you decide what to talk about and how to shape your content so more people can find it. It is useful if your podcast feels stuck or if you're not sure what to do next. It can also help if you want to treat your podcast like a serious media product and not just a hobby. It's not magic. It will not grow your show by itself, but it can point out problems you may not see and give you a clearer path forward. If you already have a few episodes and a defined niche, it is worth trying. If you're just starting out, you may not get much value yet because the tool actually needs content to analyze. But do check it out. It's called the AI Podcast Growth Report. It's a tool from Podcast Haven. I'll leave a link in the show notes for you to check it out. Before we go, here are a couple of other shows we're checking out. If travel stories are your thing, EJ, the World of Travel, takes you across places, people, and experiences to shape how we see the world, told with curiosity and a grounded voice. And for football listeners, Up Gunners, an Arsenal podcast, digs into the highs, lows, and weekly debates around Arsenal with honest reactions and sharp fan insight. Both shows are hosted by yours truly, Tony Doe, and you can find them on your usual podcast platforms.
That's it for this episode. Subscribe, share, and connect at Tony Doe Media. See you in the Podverse.